Okay, I've been doing a lot of Richey videos, and I think a lot of people are getting kind of tired of it. Well, I have a lot more coming. However, I think it's time to take a break away from it and focus on something that I have not talked about much here on the Johnny Walker Dread Show, and that is critical race theory. And boy, do we have a real live one here. This is a professor from Berkeley, and boy, she is going to lay it out. She's going to show us that our understanding of critical race theory is just so plebeian, so ignorant, so uneducated, because she's a Berkeley professor. Okay, hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Okay, so here is myth number one that all of you ignoramuses out there, you being uneducated, unable to handle the sophistication of our wonderful theories, have got all wrong. You think that CRT is being taught in K-12 schools. Oh my gosh. This is what happens when all of you trailer park dwellers don't pay close enough attention to all the wonderful things that we're saying.
Critical race theory, at its very base, is a legal theory. It's a theory about the relationship between law and racial inequality.
It's a legal theory, okay? Remember that.
Critical race theory emerged in law schools in the 1970s and 1980s in order to sort of figure out why the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did not achieve everything that we thought it was going to achieve.
Do you really think that this is the first bill that didn't achieve what it set out to achieve? Really? Okay.
It was going to achieve racial justice. We thought it was going to achieve racial equality. We thought it was at least going to achieve racial integration. And none of those things were happening. So that being said, in order for critical race theory to be taught in K through 12 schools, kindergartners through 12th graders would have to have some knowledge of the law. They would have to have some knowledge of jurisprudence, of the Supreme Court's case law, of Congress and how Congress works, etc. K through 12 students don't have that knowledge, and so as a matter of definition, critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 schools.
Yeah, remember now, critical race theory, it is so sophisticated because it was created by geniuses. These law professors create legal theory, and that's the reason why we don't teach it in K-12, because K-12 students, they don't have the mental capacity to understand all of the complexities of these theories that we have developed. It's impossible. So you don't have to worry about CRT being taught in K-12 schools, you dinglings, you ignoramuses. If you just understood how sophisticated it really is, you'd know that no middle schooler has a prayer of understanding this. Okay? Think about that. We'll come back to that full circle here in a bit.
Critical race theory is not diversity and inclusion trainings. The funny, not funny thing is that critical race theorists have offered incredibly insightful critiques of both the language of diversity and inclusion as well as the idea that you can fix racial inequality by offering these discrete trainings in corporations or in institutions. Diversity and inclusion, that language, allows us to talk about all the benefits that people of color might bring to environments without talking about the racial disadvantage that has prevented people of color from entering into these institutions in the first place.
In other words, DEI is too positive. We need negativity. We need blame.
And then the idea of trainings, corporations, institutions use these trainings as kind of like a way to purport to do something about racial inequality, but then go back to the status quo and never really do a self-study of their own policies and their own practices. They make it difficult for people of color to thrive in these institutions. So all of that to say, critical race theory is not diversity and inclusion training.
In other words, it's not radical enough. That's essentially what she is saying.
Critical race theory is largely uninterested in focusing on actors, be they good actors or bad actors. Critical race theory is a social theory.
Hey, wait a minute. A social theory? I thought it was a legal theory, but now it's a social theory. We heard about it's a legal theory that no K-12 student could ever hope to understand, and now it becomes a social theory. Why? Because ultimately we are trying to get it into public schools, and we can't hold on to this legal theory idea and do that. So all of a sudden, CRT morphs into this other kind of thing that public school students can understand.
It recognizes that racism is a social problem. And so it's really interested in focusing on institutions, structures, systems, processes, assumptions, discourses, narratives, right? These large macro processes that have made it so that our country is racially unequal. And because it is a social theory, and it's because it is largely focused on macro processes, it doesn't really pay much attention to individuals who are sort of constrained by those processes. So it doesn't vilify any group, be it white people or non-white people. It doesn't victimize any group, be they white people or non-white people. Again, it is focused on larger forces in our society that make it so that our country is a racially stratified one.
Let me translate that for you. All you white people out there are racist. You're a victim of the forces of white supremacy that have caused you to be the way you are. But we're not vilifying individuals. No, of course not. We're not going to go after Bob. We're just going to go after the population for which Bob represents. If you read the text of CRT, white supremacy permeates it. It's all about white people and the systems and structures that they have created.
Well, first of all, critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 schools, but what the GOP lawmakers are really interested in is sort of preventing any talk about race at all in schools.
And no, they're not. But notice how all of a sudden, when we were saying before that we're not focused on any populations, any groups, the boogeyman of all this is the GOP. She can't get her story straight. And again, she reminds us it's not being taught in K-12.
There were 84 student teachers in the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District last year.
Go ahead, take notes.
This fall, there are 38. In late October, California State University Fullerton said it will pause the placement of new student teachers in this K-12 district, citing lack of clarity about teaching ethnic and cultural differences and the school board's April resolution banning critical race theory.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What is it about critical race theory? Why do they feel the need to teach it?
Leandra Blades is one of 3 school board trustees who voted in favor of the ban.
We don't teach critical race theory through that type of lens.
The 2 board members who voted against it are up for re-election in just days and face fierce opposition from conservative candidates. The term critical race theory...
What's not being taught at the K-12 level? Really? Well, let's suppose it's not. It doesn't matter because you want it to be taught at the K-12 level. Don't let that legal theory crap fool you. You just wait.
And so the idea here is talking about race causes division along racial lines, and that's just not true. The country is already divided along racial lines. The country is already incredibly segregated. Our schools are segregated. Our neighborhoods are segregated. Our hospitals are segregated. Our churches are segregated. And critical race theory didn't do that. Like, we didn't create the division along racial lines.
Yeah, but you can make it far worse. And that's something that really irritates me about the left especially. They do this sort of deal where, so might as well go along with our ideas because we couldn't make it possibly worse. Oh yeah, you can. Yes, yes, racial classes in this country don't necessarily always get along. But guess what? We can make it far worse. And guess what? They have. They have done a ton of damage to racial discourse in this country. I mean, I go back 20, 30 years ago, and it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the races seem to get along better back then than they do now. In fact, it just seems to me that blacks and whites and all the others can't seem to get along at all. And why? Divisive discourse. And critical race theory is the biggest one. So this whole idea that, well, critical race theory is this benign theory that can't possibly hurt anybody. I mean, it can only do good. Right. So again, we have this completely disingenuous argument that we already have a problem right now. So therefore, any solution anybody offers can only make it better.
The way we have organized society created those divisions along racial lines, and what critical race theory is trying to do is to fix it, is to make this country live up to the promises that are contained in our Constitution, that are contained in our anti-discrimination laws. So critical race theory is actually trying to heal the divisions that we have.
Oh yeah, it's trying to heal the divisions we have. That's what critical race theory is all about. Because as you've noticed, ever since CRT went on to the public consciousness recently here, everybody's getting along so well now. I mean, look how much healing that CRT has done all over the country. School boards are now all peaceful because CRT. All the races celebrate each other because CRT. That's right, CRT has done all these wonderful things in terms of patching up the differences among the races. Right.
In this country that exists along racial lines. I'll just say that our kids, I think that we insult our kids' intelligence.
Oh wait, now we're going to hear that these kids can understand all these things. So you see, they can be taught CRT. Well, we'll see what she said.
When we think that they can't handle hearing about the hard truths of our nation, we diminish how smart they are, how insightful they are.
They're smart and insightful, but CRT it's a legal theory. They can't possibly understand it. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I forgot. It's a social theory. So you see how this works. When you want to dispel the notion that CRT is damaging our kids, what you do is you come up with this idea that, well, CRT is not public schools. It can't be in public schools because it's a legal theory. But then when you get around a different crowd, it changes. All of a sudden, now CRT needs to be in public schools.
How perceptive they are when we propose that they can't learn about our history and they can't learn about our present, even though it might be difficult to hear. Our kids are strong enough. And again, I think that we need to respect their strength, expose them to ideas that are true.
How many in here think that she would be perfectly willing for kids in her school to hear all the truths that are out there? How uncomfortable? Are there uncomfortable truths out there that she would not want students to be hearing? And you know there are. There are a ton of things that they would never allow a kid to be taught in a public school. Why? Because it makes one race or one class or something look bad. They only want white bashing stuff to be taught. As an example, the fact that American Indians owned slaves, well, guess what? That's an uncomfortable truth, okay? And I'm not necessarily in favor of teaching that because I'm not sure that that helps in any way. I'm willing to have that discussion. But this notion somehow that, well, if it's true, we must teach it, they don't believe that for one moment. It's only good if it makes white people look bad.
These are just simple truths.
I hear a lot about what CRT is not, but what I don't hear a lot from you professors is what it is because you don't want the people to know what it is. You talk about school children being prepared to learn anything that you could throw at them, yet you're not being real honest about what CRT is. You don't want the adults to know about it. Let's listen in.
Probably the most controversial part of critical race theory is the claim that they're Marxist. And it's true, but they're heavily adapting Marxism. So depending on how you count the adaptations, they're like third or fourth generation Marxism. And it's not my opinion, it's something that they're open about. So this basically opens up a whole new can of worms.
Uh-huh. You see, all these school children, they need to learn the truth about everything because no matter how uncomfortable. But when it comes to CRT and Marxism, we hide that. We're not willing to talk openly about that. However, CRT is Marxist. It's founded on a Marxist ideology. And of course, they're going to say, well, that's not the real Marxism. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about these ideologies is they always come up with this real radical stuff that really pumps them up. But when they get their teeth kicked in over it, all of a sudden the backpedaling starts. Remember defund the police? We're going to defund the police. We're not going to pay them. We're going to take away all their pensions. Well, we didn't mean that we wouldn't pay them or take away their pensions. It just means we're going to reallocate just a little bit of money towards social scientists and stuff like that, social workers, to take over for cops for jobs that the cops don't want to do. They always do this. It always starts out really radical, and then when you confront them with it, they always backpedal, and it always comes out softer and softer. And now all of a sudden, well, this is not really Marxism. Oh, you thought it was Karl Marx? Oh, no, this is Groucho Marx. Oh, you silly plebeians and your ignorance. Oh, we weren't talking about Karl. They thought we were talking about Karl Marx. Yeah, you see how this works? CRT, just a legal theory being bandied around at the local Starbucks among professors. It has no implication on anything because it's just a legal theory. Professors, right? I mean, oh, wait a minute. It's a social theory, and therefore we need to teach it to every student. They got to know this. Oh, the real underpinnings of CRT? Well, okay, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what it's not and all those myths that you're bandying about. We don't want to talk about what it is. But all these uncomfortable truths, well, these students need to know this. They need to be taught this. They can handle it. Oh, man, I'm telling you, CRT is the biggest phony, disingenuous theory that's come around in quite a long time. And you know why? Whenever you hear Berkeley professor, run. Run to the north, run to the south, run to the mountains, run to the desert. But when you hear Berkeley professor, run. Any rate, tell me what you think. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.